Hello, everybody on LinkedIn. I'm Ashley Stahl. I'm SoFi's career expert and spokesperson, and I'm so excited to have you here with Nicole Lapin. She is our special guest today for this live. We're going to talk about how to sell yourself, how to evolve during uncertain times, which I'm sure you've heard that first phrase so many times. And if you're anything like me, you're probably craving a little bit of certainty. So Nicole, just a little bio on you. I have my notes over here. You're an American television anchor, businesswoman, author of New York Times bestselling books, Rich Bitch and Boss Bitch, very fun books to say on LinkedIn. And I also know you have a new book coming out about becoming a superwoman and how to avoid burnout, which I think is really inspiring. So we'll talk about that. Thank you so much for being here with me with SoFi and just providing all this information.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Yeah, my book is actually already out. It came out last year, but I have
Woohoo!
more books brewing as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I actually kind of saw that and I was like, why is it coming out? So thank you for correcting me on that. And I know that burnout is the kind of thing that people who tend to write about it have experienced. So for everybody who's home right now and doing the best they can for self-care, how have you been taking care of yourself? And do you have any tips for everybody who's here and kind of thinking about the same thing, like taking care of themselves?
Totally. And before we jump into that, should I just take care of my video camera?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? Is it looking flashy a little bit?
It flashes every now and again, but it's not so bad.
Should I use a different computer? What do you think?
I'm worried about the technology. I'm not really sure we'll be able to get you back on here.
Okay. Okay. We're just going to do it. We're doing it live. It was acting beautiful until this happened, but this is the world we live in.
This is the world we live in, isn't it? It's so challenging, I think, to navigate these little technology glitches that I think everybody's facing with COVID and being home. How are you taking care of yourself? Because I know as a business owner, sometimes when these glitches happen, it's stressful,
Totally.
Yeah,
totally. I think that I try to be easy on myself, and I try to continue on with the little things like the gratitude journal in the morning, but not every day is a good day, of course. And so I just aim for more good days than bad days, and that's a win for me. But as far as, self-care, I think that in the BC before Corona world, we often talked about self-care being like manicures and deep tissue massages, which like Ashley, I love as much as the next girl. But of course we can't even do that stuff. I think self-care is actually more of like going to therapy. I've done a lot of therapy over Zoom, which I actually did even before the lockdown and all of that. So I think that, it's not the frilly stuff that we see on a lot of articles and listicles out there. I think it's taking care of yourself potentially in a deeper way. Like trauma therapy, never a super fun day to do that, but I think that is, that's really taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And I know that burnout, sometimes it kind of sneaks up on you. It's like you're feeling a little tired, you have a big work stint, and then suddenly it can hit. For somebody who's working from home right now, I think that a lot of, especially moms, are firing on all jets. They've got their kids, they've got lunch to prepare, homeschooling, their job. I mean, it's a lot. So I'm curious for your feedback for them of how do you start to notice the signs of burnout? Because I know we want to talk about selling yourself, but if there's no self left to sell, it's a tough pickle. So what feedback do you have for these people who are working so hard and not necessarily noticing these little signs that are kind of trickling in for burnout?
Yeah, I mean, in the normal times, I would say if you went on vacation and you came back and you still felt jaded and tired, then it could be a sign that you're experiencing burnout. And as you know, is in the World Health Organization named it a condition last year. It's not in the DSM, which is the diagnostical manual, yet as an actual psychological condition, but it's something that affects, I did the largest study ever done on women in burnout, 80 to 90% of us. And so I think now what we're seeing is essentially if you, look at your work like it's a case of diminishing returns, there's a point where you actually can't move any further. Like the more you try for an aha moment, the more your brain is like, haha. And I think that's the impetus, especially for entrepreneurs. And you can be an entrepreneur within a bigger company. So like you can be an entrepreneur. Is if you don't have actual equity or you don't have funding, then sweat equity is going to save the day. Like, just work harder, just do more, just lean in harder. And I think that's a really dangerous philosophy. And actually, like, what I've found, the way that I can sort of get around that is that it doesn't work. Like, if you look at your computer until your eyeballs are bleeding, get outside and take a little walk, because that will actually make you more productive in the long run.
Yeah, and I also I would love to ask you just about productivity, selling yourself, all these different topics. Is there anything you are doing during the quarantine or in general just to be a highly productive person, when you probably have experienced some form of burnout and learned from it and have all of this to share?
I actually had a moment as we were starting all of this where I had to be really honest with myself and say, like, I was in the thick of a book tour. I was supposed to go, continuing on to LA and Seattle and San Francisco, Chicago, all these places. And obviously that stopped. And I was kind of spent. Like, I was feeling, it's not like you cure burnout and you never feel it again. You find skills to manage it when you feel that way, because you inevitably will. So, it's not something where it's like, we all want to just wrap it up in a pretty little bow and be cured and fixed and all those things. But that's not how this works. And so I thought, like, should I just wait this one out? Should I just sit this one out? Like, maybe I need a break. And you know what? Not everyone can be a leader during these times. And in fact, by definition, not everyone can be a leader, because then there's nobody to lead. And so I really thought for a few days. I didn't put anything out on social media. Like, I did some soul searching. And then, of course, I, really intentionally decided that I would take a stand and that I would try to, put out as much content about financial, news and make accessible business and money content out there like I've never done before. And so I stepped it up. But like, there's a moment where you just have to ask yourself, like, what is the definition of success? And if we keep moving the goalposts, we're never going to actually get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that can be very tempting. How would you discern for somebody who's listening right now and kind of reflecting on exhaustion, what that fine line is where they cross over from just tired into burnout? Like, what are some signs that actually classify them as burnt out?
Yeah, I think that, oftentimes anxiety and depression can be confused with burnout. So I am no medical doctor. I kind of got my butt kicked and figured out how to get out of that, in the school of hard knocks. But if you're feeling those types of symptoms, then you definitely should see a professional.
Okay, really helpful. And I know that, selling yourself can be really intimidating for a lot of people during something like COVID, where maybe their business took a dip. And I know that you are hard at work, focused on your business. What are some ways, because I know that when we talked before this, you said it's a great time to start a business. So what is that perspective? Where's that coming from? And what are some ways that people can get started?
So I started my company during the last recession. So I actually left Network News and started a company called Recession-proof, which a year later the recession ended. So yay, economy, boo for my business. But amazing companies have started during tough economic times, from Trader Joe's to Disney to GM to GE, and great fortunes have been made during tough economic times. So I think that there are great opportunities, even if you can figure out how to, sell what you have already been selling with more relevant marketing. So I was just listening to an early edition of our latest Hush Money episode, which is the podcast I have on iHeart with Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. And we were talking about this very subject, and he gave an example of somebody who had like a cruise line company or a franchised vacation company, and they figured out how to sell cruises now. And so, I think that people are nervous about promoting themselves, about being tone deaf, but to the extreme. We're kind of in a place where it's not, this is a new normal. And so it's not like, feeling in the way beginning of it that it was all doom and gloom and, terrible news. This is like, how are we going to adapt right now. And yeah, if somebody can sell a freaking cruise, and then, you know, you can sell your product and figure out a way to do that. I think that we had a question in from a person who was like, how do I sell a positive psychology class? It doesn't feel relevant. I'm like, dude, yes, you just have to figure out how and A/B test, like how that's going to resonate with your audience, because people need stuff right now. So if you can be of service, I think they'll remember you after this is over.
Yeah. And you know, this makes me think a lot about one topic you kind of had mentioned at one point with me was giving value, you know, free value. And so I know that it can be kind of challenging, like that guy who wants to sell that positive psychology course. On one side, he's probably also thinking there's so many free courses online. Like, how do I sell myself and charge? So what are your thoughts on giving free value, and what are some tips around that? And then also some thoughts on when you want to charge, you know, how to do it well during something like this.
So this is something that I have really thought a lot about for my own business, because in the beginning I thought, gosh, I cannot charge anybody for anything. You know, there was an article actually on Entrepreneur that was all the free stuff that's available right now. And they started with a few things, and then it became 198 things. So it's a great time, by the way, to take advantage of the free stuff. But as a business owner, you know, I'm not running a charity. Like, I still have to run a business. And so there is a sweet spot where you can be, you know, relevant to what's happening, acknowledge what's happening, but also not give away all of your product for free. And I think there's a lot of pressure around that. So I have the Money School, for instance, which is my money masterclass, the Boss School, which is my, you know, Not Your Mama's B School. And those are expensive classes. So I took a look at it and figured out how to slash the prices and bundle them together, and remarket it with more updated information based on the times. But I didn't give it away for free. And I was really clear about that like, to my entire team, to folks that were reaching out, you know, I think that there is this pressure that everything is, you know, has to be charitable, and that's awesome if it is. But, you know, I think that we're also, as we're settling into, we talked about the new normal, we have to figure out a way to continue to make money during this time.
Yeah. And no shame in making money. That's what keeps the economy going around. I love that. And I also know that there's a lot of people probably watching us and thinking to themselves, like, how do I know if I'm supposed to start a business? Because you said now is a great time to start. And for some reasons it really is. How does somebody know if they're just that creative intrapreneur within a company versus an entrepreneur who's supposed to start that side hustle or that business? What is that little sweet sauce that you think makes the difference?
So not everyone should be an entrepreneur, for sure. Not everyone should start a business, but I think it's important to get it out of your system. So sometimes just realizing what you don't want to do is as important as realizing what you do want to do. And sometimes it's even more important. So in normal times, I would talk about the idea that, like, if you work at a bigger company and you're dreaming about a cupcake shop and you always wanted to make an artisanal cheese shop or an alpaca farm or whatever your dream was, you know, try that as a side hustle. And if you hate it, sometimes stuff is supposed to be just a hobby and not a jobby, because once you start selling cupcakes and not just making cupcakes, then you have to source flour, you have to do accounting, you have to do all this like not sexy fun stuff that made you love making cupcakes. Like, all business stuff is not rainbows and butterflies, I'll tell you that for sure. And so, so this is a great time to try it. I used to have little debates with different business experts, who would say, YOLO, FOMO, whatever, if not now, when, just go try this thing, burn your corporate bra, like I've go out and do it. Totally. And I would be like, listen, I didn't have that luxury. I grew up in an immigrant family. Like, I was dealt a terrible hand. I played it the best I could. I needed a job. I figured out how to love what I did because I didn't have the luxury of doing what I loved. Like, I hated business news. I was like, no, thank you. Yeah. But I loved writing and I loved storytelling. And so I figured out the shaded part of that Venn diagram for myself, because I couldn't go out and like sit under a tree and write poetry because I had to pay the bills. And so now, though, I am rethinking my advice on everything based on this, but also around the idea of starting your own thing, because there's actually never a better time, like if not now, then when, truly. If you got furloughed, really think of it like a breakup. I made this analogy on CNN the other day. And, you know, if you're taking a break in a relationship and you're with somebody that's like, you know what, I just need some time off, it means you guys aren't doing well. So if you got furloughed, it means your company is not doing well. I just want to be super real about that. It means they can't pay you or something else is going on. And so you need to decide and take back that power, because the impetus is, you know, if you go on a break with somebody in a romantic situation, you'd be like, why? Why don't they love me? Like, why do they want to break? I hope they just take me back, blah, 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 blah. Maybe you don't, but you also have to take back that power and realize that you're 50% of that relationship, you're 50% of your job, and you have just as much power to say like, no, dude, we're done, as the other person does. And the same thing with the job. This is an important time. If you can explore other avenues of what you might want to do, then this is a good time to remember that you have the power.
I love this. And for those of you who are watching, make sure you submit your questions. We're keeping tracks. I got my little note document with questions that will pop in over here soon. I also want to ask you about making your brand recession proof, because that, when I think about that topic, I just think like, wow, that would be an incredible feeling for so many people. What are some mindsets or approaches that you think business owners need to have right now to start making their business way more recession proof?
I mean, I've pivoted a gazillion times. I mean, this is not my first apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like I said, I started Recessionista. And so, you know, definitely don't come up with a company with the name recession in it, because that's not gonna last. But, you know, I think that's just what entrepreneurs do. Like, this is, you know, this is not anyone's first apocalypse in looking death in the eye of what your business is doing. And so, you know, to become recession proof, you just continue to change the way you're talking about your products. And, you know, pivot, we're going to be so sick of this word in a couple of months, in the same way as we used to be sick of disrupt or omni-channel or all these sort of like cliche words. But I think there's a lot of validity to that just in general. Like, I think entrepreneurs, true scrappy entrepreneurs, are built for this. You don't go into business thinking like it's all going to be rainbows and butterflies every day. And so if it's not this, you know, if it's not a macro disruption, then it could be a micro disruption of some sort later on. Like, you could have a supply chain issue, you could have, you know, some takeover, you could have something else. There's always going to be something.
Yeah. And I know that we talked a little bit about adding free value. What are some ways that you think any business could consider adding free value right now? How could that look without it maybe costing them so much? You know, because I know, I think of like that cupcake shop that can't afford to give away those free cupcakes or something like that. What are some suggestions you have to add free value?
So this is a great time to think about what you can teach. And we can all teach something. So whether you did hair or makeup, and you think that has to be IRL, of course, there are virtual ways to do that. I might be your first customer. But, you know, whether you know about like Asian art or modern architecture or whatever, like, there is somebody on the other end of that. And so I think you can put those skills out there in a way that you might not have thought before, you know, and in sort of not really risky ways. Fiverr, Upwork, these types of sites, if you want to explore it, if you think that that's just going to be something that keeps your mind going, maybe makes extra money on the side. But yeah, you can always be of service. I think in general, coming to a place of trying to be of service and really listening to what your audience wants. Like, you can give lessons, but not cupcakes. Like, you can explain how to bake or whatever, do a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live or like a LinkedIn Live and say, okay, well, here's, you know, how to make frosting or whatever. I'm just making this up. but here's my kit that you can buy too. It's all put together, which is what a lot of restaurants are doing right now. Even takeout, they're putting like these little kits together. So you're taking the products you have and repackaging them.
Yeah, beautiful. I feel like this mindset of just teaching and providing information that's of value is huge. And we have a question from somebody who is asking for people who've been perhaps in academia the past few years. So maybe they have a body of work. Can you give some information on like how you could set up, like I know you have your own business, how you set up that business for somebody who maybe wants to start creating a business that shares knowledge in some way?
Yeah, so there are a lot of plug and chug sites. I spent a lot of money, truthfully, on building like my own modules and back end system, all custom fancy. I, in hindsight, maybe wish that I would have used some of these options out there, but there are a ton of companies that will allow you to get into like the course business with very little initial money up front. And so I would definitely explore those. Those weren't even options to the level they are right now when I was starting. So, it's never been a better time to set up your own home studio. I mean, yeah. I have learned so much tech stuff. I was in TV for a gazillion and a half years, and I have so much mad respect for crews right now. I mean, this flashing thing, I just want to punch this computer.
I'm hardly noticing it. Don't even.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, because I have like thousands of dollars of equipment all over me, and I'm like, this should work. I have like this mic for my podcast. I have all good. But I never thought that I would know how to use any of this stuff. Like I've been broadcasting on CNN and wherever, like from my kitchen right now. Yeah. And so I'm learning about, 3-point lighting and like backlighting and mics and the converters for like a Blackmagic or an Elgato to go from the DSLR to the computer, like all this stuff that I would have never ever needed to know. But you know what? That's actually going to make me much stronger moving forward. And so I'm happy that I know that. But now that stuff isn't really sold out from the equipment standpoint, then it's so much easier. I mean, I had a huge crew when I was shooting my master classes, but now you can just do that really nimbly. And if it's passive income, if you get one sale, that is awesome. If it's really just something that you're doing to create another stream of income. Of course, we all talk about the idea that most millionaires have 7 streams of income. If you're like, you need to keep adding, then there's really not much to lose there.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And for those of you who are taking notes on maybe places you can get free content, I know Allison.com is one, Coursera is one, Udemy. What else is there? LinkedIn Learning has, I believe, mostly paid, but I'm sure there's got to be something free. So many resources there. And also just to add on to what you're saying and piggyback onto your idea that you can be really nimble. When I started my podcast, U-Turn Podcast, I basically just took my voice memo app of my iPhone. I mean, I can't believe I did this looking back, but I so recommend it to somebody who wants to be quick. Barely understood the technology, did interviews on Skype or Zoom, and put my iPhone voice memo on my computer. It would pick up the audio from the person speaking into my computer. It would pick up me talking. And that was my podcast episode. The first 50 episodes, because I just did my podcast as a passion project. And then when it super took off, I was like, I better start caring about the audio. So I think that it's really just about getting started and taking action.
All these types of things.
Yeah, that gives me anxiety.
The Zoom.
Yeah, the Zoom. I mean, everybody, and it's so tough, I think, for people starting out, is they're thinking to themselves, everybody says it's so easy, but it doesn't necessarily, something like that doesn't necessarily look easy, but anybody can figure out Zoom and put their voice memo up and press play for their podcast interview. So that was what I did. It's just a reflection, and, so many platforms, whether it's ClickFunnels or whatever. And, you've got platforms like us over at SoFi, with free career coaches, free financial advisors. So there's so many businesses providing free value to their members and even otherwise people who are not members. If
I could do it, anyone can.
Yeah,
sure.
That's how I feel, because I am the most tech illiterate person to this day. I can't believe I even clicked the buttons right to get this LinkedIn Live going. So
I am
Look at
proud
me.
of you. We're making it work.
You've got a flash. I've got a bad hair day. We're going to crush it.
You know what?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Not to get all philosophical necessarily, but I go back to Stoicism, which the main philosophy is that you suffer more in imagination than in reality. And so when it comes to getting your financial life together, when it comes to like techie equipment stuff, we think that it's going to be really hard until we just try to do it. And I was valedictorian of my high school and college. I'm not saying this to be like, ooh, I am so awesome. Like that and 350 gets me a soy latte when we can go back and get a soy latte. So it's not helping me in my life. But like I say that because I have figured out way harder things in my life. And so sometimes the biggest enemy is between our ears.
Yeah, it's so true. And kind of taking you back to when you started your business, I love that you were saying that you didn't have an easy upbringing. Not that I wish that for you, but I think that that's the truth for a lot of people. And sometimes they see business owners and they think like they had somebody who funded them or helped them in some way. And you sound like you really fought your way to success. So after some of that trial and error you did, what were a few things you did as you started that you think were total game changers for your business? Like I know oddly, one game changer for my private practice, like 10 years ago was Yelp, and it still works. Like if you build a body of reviews that are making you more reviewed than everybody else and you get great reviews, you're going to get a certain stream amount of buyers every single month that are calling you very pre-qualified calls. So do you have any little tricks, tips, special sauces for people that you really counted on that ended up turning into revenue for you that you think maybe somebody could look at right now?
Yeah, listen, if I could do it, for sure anyone could do it. I still have an irrational fear that I'm going to be broke, alone, homeless, die in the gutter with cats. And so maybe that keeps me going all the time because it's totally irrational fear. But yeah, I really didn't have anything to lose. I also, didn't have a backstop of going home to a couch. So I just kept going, and iterated, as I mentioned before, pivoted all along the way. And really, it clicked when I was hosting a show called Hatched, which is like a Shark Tank for kids. It was on the educational informational block of Saturday and Sunday morning TV on the CBS stations and CW. And I would talk to a bunch of kids who were selling their products. We would test them in retail. They're all consumer products. And I would ask them all these questions like, what's your drip campaign? What's your funnel? What's your CRM? Like all these things that you would need to have a robust consumer product business. And it was then that it really dawned on me that I am that. Like I need to start getting down with marketing myself that way. Where am I picking up emails? Because by the way, like that's your one connection to customer. And I was going to speeches and doing events, but I wasn't collecting emails like I was telling other people to do. And sometimes the shoemaker walks barefoot when it comes to advice. So yeah, I definitely started taking my own advice then. And just got much smarter on what that looked like for me, because I, like in my personal life, I'm actually an introvert. So I am an extroverted introvert. I probably paid a lot of money in therapy to figure that out. But it means that like I have to create and really get down with the idea that the persona is almost a caricature. And so that's so much part of my business. It's like I had this little boy on the show called Jack, and he had this toffee company. And I'll never forget, they were pitching this little company, and he had this packaging that was green and black and super corporate-y looking. And then this little boy was telling us why he started this company to help his little brother who had Williams syndrome that like couldn't have dyes and whatever artificial stuff. So he made this toffee. And I'm like, where is that story from this packaging? He's like, but it's not about me, it's about the toffee. I'm like, no. People care about stories. People remember stories. I mean, I remember this story years later because it was so interesting. I was like, put your face on there, put that story on there. And so, it can feel uncomfortable. I totally acknowledge that putting yourself out there or, saying, buy my stuff, or I'm so awesome or whatever. It's like, it can feel, especially during these times. But people really want to buy from people, not brands, and like hear stories and buy into that. So, I think it's not necessarily a system, although, I got Keep and, all of these types of transactional apps and software and stuff like that for sure. But it was really getting down with that mentality that was the game changer.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of people want to hide behind a business sometimes because it can feel really vulnerable to put yourself out there and sell yourself. What are some ways that you have created really special relationships? Because I know, and I would love your take on networking right now, because I think some people are like, what, should I be doing it? Is there no point? Does anybody care? And if I do it, how do they even remember me and stay connected to me? So what insights do you have for relationship building during this time?
So I use my love language. I don't know if you know what your love language is. So acts of service, mine is gifting. And so I send little gifts. I have a gift giving problem. There are worse problems to me.
Especially for everybody getting the gift. That's an amazing problem.
Totally. And so I talk about in my second book, in Boss Bitch, where I've sent the craziest things to people after meetings. Somebody talked about Argyle socks. I sent them a box of Argyle socks. Somebody talked about cat poo coffee article in the New York Times. I figured out how to get this luwak coffee from Bali or whatever. It doesn't even need to be expensive. Assistants who told me they were sick, I sent them a little pack of emergency or whatever. And I think that thought goes a long way. And so I now send these flowers that last for a year. And I actually worked with the company and the female founder there. So I was their number one customer. And so I was like, girl, we need to work together. And so, I send them because they last for so long. So folks see it on their desk or wherever in their office and they're like, Nicole, maybe her for something. And so that's been a way for me to continue to connect. Handwritten notes. I just got one from an amazing female founder. And I was like, how does this girl have a second she just had a baby too. She sent me a note with sealing wax and like a full handwritten note for a thank you card. And you know what? That's such a boss bitch move. So I think that I've always been a fan of handwritten notes. And I think it just, and if that's not your thing, just figure out what your thing is to stand out, that you can just maintain relationships and try to be hopeful to other people.
And I want to talk about outreach in the first place, because I know that the gifting point kind of is like that little marker of success of like the conversation itself happened and there's good energy around it. Like, how do you recommend people even start that dialogue? Because I know people are sitting at home right now thinking to themselves, like, how do I contact somebody? How do I create a mentorship with them? How do I create a bond with them? How do I have a good exchange with them? How do you recommend people reach out in the first place? Or is there any communication tools you have for that?
So first of all, I'm going on a war with I'm sorry and just. I think that women in particular say that way too much. And also, if you want a mentor, do not say, will you be my mentor? I've had women at big events in the past when we saw human beings say like, will you be my mentor, and get on the mic. And I said flat out in front of everyone, no. Yeah. Who are you? I don't know you. Like, no. But if you stood up and you were like, hey, or you sent me an email, hey, I've noticed that you said that you love gifting on the SoFi LinkedIn Live, and I have this other idea and a hookup for this other, plant that lasts for a year. It could be cheaper than what you're sending. Let me just, here's the link. Let me know if I can make an intro or be helpful to you. Yeah. All day, every day, and twice on Sunday, I'm going to respond to that, because otherwise, like, I don't know you. Like, my time is so valuable. And that's the other thing, when I love giving free advice, but when it gets to a certain point when people are like, here's my, bank statements, here's my 401k, or something, I'm like, whoa, like, consultation. Like, I charge by the hour for this. We can give a little sample, but I won't have the business otherwise. And so when it comes to mentorship, like if you come to the conversation from a super thoughtful, how can I be helpful? How can I be of service to you? Really not expecting anything in return. Those are the times when you'll probably get the most in return.
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? The ultimate irony that people who want to give end up getting. I just love that that's how networking works. And I think a lot of people have a mindset that networking is taking, but I think when you're pointing out when it's done right, it really is a form of giving, which is a beautiful thing, because the bigger the network you have, the more people you can connect and help and put yourself in a position to make an impact through that. So really awesome. And I want to talk to you. I mean, I have other questions coming in. Somebody said, how do you feel about Etsy? And I realize now, at first I was like, well, how does she feel about it? But I'm guessing they're asking, how do you feel about it as a place to start a business? What are your thoughts on Etsy?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think, I'd add to the other point as well. If you are looking for somebody's help, like if you have a specific, if you want somebody to help promote like a mask that you just made and put on Etsy or whatever business that you're starting, the wrong thing to do is to send a note like, hey, can you help me get the word out? No, like I have 1,000 gazillion things in my mind right now. I don't want to think through your marketing strategy, but I do want to help and I do want to be helpful. So if you can send me instead, like, hey, Nicole, can you put out this already pre-written tweet and link and like did the thinking for me? Totally, like just do the thinking for me. So when I have friends who are writing books or want to promote stuff, and just like, tell me exactly what you want me to say. If you want me to endorse your book or whatever, can you like write it for me, write the sentence? And that's how I did my endorsements, for instance. And so the more specific, the better when you're asking for help, whether you're starting an Etsy shop or writing a book.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm guessing because you talked about email lists and not being the shoe repair guy with bare feet, it would also probably be supportive to explore giving some sort of free value that links people to your Etsy business versus just sending them straight to the page perhaps, or catching an email or something like that so that somebody else can go market to those leads. So just taking your advice over here, Nicole. And I want to ask just about authenticity, because I know that as people are forming relationships, that can be a thought that they're having is, how do I be myself, and I don't know why. I don't know if I came out of the womb this way, but I'm just having a good time, usually feeling pretty myself. But I get this question all the time, and it's been hard for me to be able to teach it because I don't know how to express what I'm up to when I'm just being myself. Do you have any tips for people to be authentic and be real, or how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome that you came out of the womb that way. I certainly did not. I took a lot about all the imposter syndrome and all the, all the things that I went through. I thought my badge at CNN wasn't going to work every single day. I was like,
oh my God,
they're going to find me out. They're going to know that I'm a fraud and that I'm young and that, I'm going to be fired. They're just going to turn off my badge. I was like totally convinced of this for a long time. But I think becoming comfortable in your skin is a journey for all of us, whether in business or in our personal lives. And I think the best attribute that I look for when I'm hiring, when I look for a friend or a partner in life, is self-awareness and being just really self-aware of your strong suits and your weaknesses, because we all have them. That doesn't mean like be so self-deprecating, apologizing for everything. But I think like you can always turn that around. If you apologize, like crap happens all the time. We're late for Zooms, things flash, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Ashley. It's, how can I make it up to you? I'll do anything, blah, blah, blah. Just be like, thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Just be, understand that your phone just rang or whatever. Yeah. And like, I'm acknowledging it. And I think that if we try to cover up and whitewash things that are obvious, it just comes across, I think, as disingenuous. And so, when we're
into the room,
when we're talking about terrible stuff in business, we've all been there. I mean, I've been let go. I've left jobs. I think that the question I get asked a lot now is, should I put it out on social media? Absolutely. Like your community, especially right now, is going to be your best value for finding something else if you did get furloughed, let's say. And by the way, maybe it has to do with you as an employee. I don't know, but most likely it has to do with the pandemic. So people know that you're talented, and maybe you're even talented on the cheap. And so they're going to know your skills. And so if you go out, you know, if you put out on Facebook or put out on whatever, I don't want to help a girl who's like, my life is fabulous, it's all good, I'm just baking bread and, you know, whatever. No, I'm not rooting for that girl. But if you're like, hey, you know, I got furloughed, I'm really thinking about this. Yeah, I'm going to root for that girl all day, every day. And if you don't talk about what you have in mind as a business, nobody else is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you touched on something really powerful, and it's naming it. So for example, like me trying to figure out technology and get my phone unlinked from my laptop, like being able to name it. And I think being a human, it's funny. I started off saying, I don't really know how to tell people to be authentic, because just be you. But I hear what you're saying here. And I think naming it is such a tool to take elephants out of the room, because what creates separation in relationships? Elephants in the room, things you know, but you're not naming. And so when you name something, and there is a fine line, I think, between shining a spotlight on an insecurity versus just addressing something that needs to be addressed. So really great. And I see that, oh, go ahead, talk to me.
Oh, all I would add there is, you know, really naming it first has been a tactic that I talked about earlier today in a meeting, actually, for my first book, Rich Bitch. I didn't go to MBA, didn't work at a bank. I was getting my financial certifications, and I was so panicked that people were gonna find me out. I had that same imposter syndrome that I had, you know, when I thought my badge wasn't gonna work. And I, you know, was sick over it. I remember breaking out into hives chronically. I was just like, you know, people are gonna make fun of me, all these fears that I had. And then the thing now that I've done over and over again in books and, you know, in other mediums, I just said it. I was like, hey, I didn't work at a bank. I didn't get my MBA. Like, I went to the School of Hard Knocks. I used to think that would make me a terrible person to write a book about personal finance. But in fact, you know, being in debt and being broke myself makes me the best person to do it, because I just figured it out the hard way, and I don't speak in jargon. So yeah, calling out the thing that you fear the most, I think it took me a long time to realize, but can be one of your most powerful tools in business.
Yeah, and you touched on something I think that I would love to ask you about is, I know SoFi is helping so many people consolidate debt and give them loans that they can really handle and have their life back in such a big way. And that's something I didn't know about as an entrepreneur who went into $500,000 of debt and paid it off myself. So I understand you over there. The School of Hard Knocks is a very legitimate school. And I would love to understand what you did to, I don't know, take some steps to pay off debt, or just be financially a little bit more savvy for everybody who's listening to you right now.
So I grew up in immigrant family, first generation American, like a lot of immigrant kids. You use cash. You recently realized that nobody also uses the dishwasher, no matter where your parents immigrated from. The dishwasher, it looks brand new, but I digress. So using cash, not reading the Wall Street Journal, not talking about stocks or bonds, like that was the world I knew. And so when I got my dream job on TV, I got a credit card for the first time. I got myself in $5,000 of credit card debt for not a good reason. I mean, people are getting into credit card debt now for pandemic. That's a way more legit reason than wanting cute clothes for being on TV. But I got myself out of it the hard way by breaking it down into what that looked like every single day. And I think with anything overwhelming, breaking it down into baby steps just makes it so much more manageable. So I think it was like $7 a day. That was, you know, a glass of wine back then. It's like half a glass of wine potentially now. And so I was like, I can do this. And so that's what I did. And I created a little plan to prioritize, to polarize debt, and ranked it by highest interest rate first and stuff like that. But yeah, I made a plan that was 2 years, I remember. So I gave myself a deadline. I didn't make it too stringent, but I didn't make it too comfy cozy. And I think that's the point, you know, it's allowing yourself small indulgences. So coming up with the debt slaying plan that like doesn't allow you to buy a latte or an occasional tie-dye tracksuit from Amazon these days, is not a fun way to live. And we need those small indulgences. Otherwise, we'll end up binging later on. And so I think a financial diet is a lot like a regular diet. If you don't allow yourself those small indulgences, you'll inevitably binge on something else later on.
Yeah. And one thing that people, and I'm seeing some questions pop in around networking again, which is so interesting. Asking, how do you build a community? How do you network online? So what are some tools that you're using as a business owner to build community and add that value in that way and engagement?
Oh, it's funny. So I just actually signed up for a company called Community.
Ah.
And I'm having a call with them right after this. It's the texting company where I've put out on all my socials, like, text me at this number. And so I'm figuring that system out. I think there's a lot of growth there in text communication, text marketing. So yeah, the secret everybody wants to know, like, is it my real phone number? Well, it is, but it goes to a whole other interface where I can tag people based on what they're looking to hear from me. And it's just like a more conversational way to build community and then to ultimately market to people, but not it having it be a super hard sell. So that's a platform that I'm really excited about right now.
Well, and it's called Community.
Yeah.
What a great name for a platform. Yeah. And what a perfect one. And then as far as networking online, there's also a question just around where do you go to forge those relationships? Are you big on the DM? Does it go down in your DMs? Do you do LinkedIn messages? Like, how do you approach people?
So I am lucky that I have a team that helps me manage a lot of these communications, but I think that there is no shame to slipping into DMs, but like, do it in the right way. I have definitely made internet friends, like social media friends that I have never met in real life, but have developed relationships with that way. I think that if you're reaching out though, use the same philosophy of trying to be of service to someone else. And like, even if you're starting out, I said, I think in my first book, like, if you are young and you haven't really started in business, it doesn't matter. As long as you're making clear notes. I used to write in my phone when I was taking somebody's number, like, little notes about them. Oh, they said that their kid is having a bar mitzvah. Oh, they're going to Mexico or whatever. So I could follow up more specifically, not just like me. Hey, great to talk about your trip to Mexico, whatever. Like, and I know you mentioned that you're planning your son's bar mitzvah. My friend is amazing DJ. Here's the number. Like, you could have gone to high school with this kid. Like, anyone can be of service in any way possible. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, I know this, great online marketing funnel thing. No, it could be like something superhuman. Like, hey, I know a DJ. You need a DJ? Like,
yeah.
That's the stuff that we remember at the end of the day. So I think just continuing to be of service in how you reach out to anyone is going to make you stand out versus like, hey, I just need your help in all these things. I'm like, no, delete, bye. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can't help you.
Yeah, totally. And I also know that, kind of going back to, because I think those are most of the questions I'm seeing for now, but I'm sure more will pop in. But in the meantime, going back to burnout, where we started, what are some steps that you would recommend? I know you said get outside, don't just work nonstop, but are there any steps you recommend for somebody who is actually dealing with like serious burnout, beyond going to a mental health professional or seeing them on Zoom in today's world? What are some steps that someone can take right now to say, okay, I think this is a big deal. I'm seeing a professional. Any tips for their day-to-day that might make a really big impact?
In fact, I have 12, Ashley.
Let's do that.
Yeah. The first step is admitting you have a problem. All my books are 12-step plans. So, I think beyond that, it's creating a routine for yourself. Like, the middle of the day is chaos, but you can control your morning and your evening routines for sure. And so, yeah, certainly are there days that I'm like scrolling on Instagram as my eyeballs open on my ex-boyfriend's page? For sure. Like, do I pull off Flash and like try to make something out of my life? For sure. But and then are there other days that I leave the phone downstairs and, I wake up and do some gratitude journaling, which I, by the way, feel totally the difference when I do it, when I don't do it. And it takes a few minutes. Do I do all my morning stuff and then like write down what my intentions are for the day before I go into email firefighting, because then I go into other people's agendas, and then at the end of the day you're like, wait, did I actually do anything, or did I just
what happened
like
today?
play whack-a-mole of emails coming in? And that's actually makes you feel way less accomplished. So we're human beings, not human doings, right? And so I think really being intentional about what you have going into a day, batching your time has really helped me, batching social media time. So like I'm doing it, but I'm doing it from here to here. And then the other time I'm doing deep work and I'm focusing on writing, I'm focusing on something else. And then if I, want to go on a dating app or whatever, like I'm doing it at a specific time versus like this dopamine cage match that we get ourselves in.
Yeah.
And so that's really helped me. Batching emails has made me so much more productive. And by the way, you train people how to respond to you.
Yeah.
You know the people that respond in like 3 seconds, you know the people that take more thoughtful time and respond in 3 days. And then, in the end of the day, of course we're appropriate. And if your boss, I know there's like all these caveats, but at the end of the day, also that's your time. So I used to have total insomnia and I used to wonder like, why can I not sleep? I don't know, maybe Captain Obvious, because I was shining a bright light right into my eyeball from my iPhone from like 4 inches away. And so when I stopped doing that, I could sleep a lot better. I could, read, I could focus on how I ended my day, set me up for so much more success the next day. And throughout the day, just really incorporating batching and boundaries. There are ways to say no to things. Your time is your most valuable asset. You can always get more money. You can't get more time. And if you don't value your time, no one else will. So you have to say no.
Yeah, I love this tip so much. And I want to like put a little flag on it here, because I think a lot of people judge themselves as mean for saying no. I found for me as an entrepreneur, sometimes it feels like, I think for entrepreneurs that consumers expect something from them of their time. I don't know if you found that, but do you have any tips for people to communicate to members when there's or customers or people that don't really know their business and have approached them and say, hey, no, I don't do that, or hey, no, that's not going to work, or hey, no, I don't want to work with you? Or how do you say no in those sorts of sticky situations? Or hey, can I pick your brain? How do you say no to that?
Yeah, it's actually such a huge issue in the entrepreneurial community, as you know, of like firing clients and things like that. That was never thought of. But I often think of myself in the asker's perspective. If I said yes to something I would do a half-ass job with, then I wouldn't be stoked. Like if you can't full ask, then you're not doing the person any service, right? Like I would want to know from my employees too, if I'm asking them to do something and they're not going to be able to do it really great, I would like to know, versus them saying yes and then turning out something crappy. Like that's actually more helpful to me to know that I need to get that done somewhere else. And so I really put myself in that perspective. And then, I know that my co-host Jason has pre-done responses for when people want to pick his brain. And, you can come up with like, you can do a shortcut on your phone and put in like some code and write out something that you feel comfortable with and good about, whatever that is. Hey, I'm focusing on writing my book right now. And so and scaling back on whatever obligation or stuff like that, and stay in touch, whatever. But you could do those as shortcuts too. So when people are asking for your time and being able to say no. Lately, I have also been saying no to customers as well, and this is a new thing where I want to be all things to all people, but you can't. You will be nothing to anyone. This is like in branding, when I'm writing my books, I know exactly who she is. I can't be all things cool finance to like men, women, dogs, cats. Like, no, I know who she is. I know how old she is. And if I try to be everything and dilute it, like I'm not going to have that stronghold there. So lately, I've had like almost abusive customers that expect all of these things from me from when they buy products from me. And I've said, recently, like, You know what? I would love to give you a refund. And if you find that there's another financial expert that might be more resonant for you, like I encourage you to look there, because it seems as if I'm not able to satisfy your needs. And that's just better peace of mind.
Yeah, what you're saying just reminds me of that Instagram graphic I've seen floating around. This is if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So I love that. And final question, just wrapping up, have I not asked you something that you are just so brilliant at that I should have asked you just as the final question for this LinkedIn Live?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I would just say, if you don't define the rules, you'll never win the game. And so whether it's now or in other times, I think we often think we're doing worse than we are because we don't define what success means. So, we think we're not being productive, but if we don't have a definition, we'll be destined to fail. And we often keep changing the goalposts on ourselves. So we'll say like, we'll be happy or we'll be successful when we get there. And then you get there and there's always another there, and you never really get your brain to the other side. So comparison is the thief of joy. It's easy to compare to stuff on social media and think you're not successful, but maybe that's their definition of success. And, you have to really stay true to whatever yours is and whatever your truth is.
I love this. Thank you so much for being live with us at SoFi. I really appreciate you. Great tips. And thanks everybody for your questions.